Thank you, Florence, and thank you to the lovely group that I was able to listen to just now. Of course, what John described so elegantly is the skill and the art of facilitating in a small group, a discussion group of, say, up to 10 people. What I want to share with you now is the responsibility of the person who holds a whole event together. Perhaps about 60 people have come together, and they're in a big hall and they're sitting around small tables, perhaps 10 to 12 per table. So you've got 60 people there. So there's 5 tables full up, and you've already briefed the facilitators so that they know what they're expected to do. And the show is about to start. And you're there, the curator. Another word for you might be the master of ceremonies. And you're probably feeling quite anxious. I always feel anxious, and I've done quite a lot of these. And it never gets easier, that slight sense of stage fright just before it starts. Supposing that one of the facilitators turns out not to be able to do it without getting bossy. Supposing we have a big argument on one table and people just won't get on, or supposing they refuse to look at the topic that's been given to them. Oh, you get nervous. And I think that's probably a good sign. You should have been nervous before it started. You should have been in touch with the organizers, saying to them, have you made sure you've got a really good diversity of people coming to the dialogue? When certain people fell out, did you go and look for somebody from the same stakeholder group to come and replace them? So if you lost a farmer, did you get another farmer in her place? If you lost somebody who's on a low income and who's going to come and talk about food poverty, have you got somebody else who'll do the same? Because you're all the time trying to make sure that there's diversity. And then people don't always turn up on the day. Something goes wrong at home. There's another outbreak of COVID to deal with, whatever. And so even at the time, you need to be working on the reserve list and making sure that if extra people come along, you're allocating them to the tables so that there is proper diversity at the tables. So my first little point that if you've got a notebook, I'd like you to write down is the people, making sure that you maintain diversity right up to the starting moment. Because once it's started, it's very difficult to move people around between tables. They kind of like their tables. Second point, the topics. Do have a look at the topics that have been selected for the tables, because if the topics are really difficult for people at a table to understand, if the topics are really difficult for the facilitator to clarify, if there's confusion in the topic, then it can really mess up the beginning of the discussion, and you can end up with quite a difficult debate around the discussion table, trying to understand what the topic really means. So you want to be sure that the topic, whilst indicating something that's really challenging for the future, is still also something that people can deal with quickly. And it's not a great long essay that they're going to spend ages trying to understand. And by the way, I'm one of these essay writers. I always need to ask somebody else to help me to slim down my topics. Now, I like discussion groups to last for 75 minutes. I'm a great believer. People need at least an hour to get talking and to get sharing. And it helps hugely if they know they've got a decent amount of time. At the same time, if I'm the curator of an event and I've got 6 tables and I've got facilitators at each of these tables, I'm not just going to sit in a corner and check my emails. I'm going round and I'm sitting, trying to be a bit invisible. I'm watching what goes on. I'm watching the facilitators do their facilitation. I'm watching the mood in the group. I'm trying to see how it's moving around. Sometimes there's quiet in a group as people are fiddling around with post-it notes, trying to work out what really matters to them. That's fine if facilitators want to do it like that, all well and good. But I sometimes say, don't let it go on for too long, because you're going to have to get the process going. So I chivvy them a bit. Other times when I see that things are broken down a bit, I'll do and come along and advise on the tips that John suggests. So I think as the curator, it's my job to be going round the tables, seeing what's going on. And at the same time, I'm just listening and looking, because I've got to work out an order for the feedback of the facilitators for the wider group. And I want the first one to feedback to be somebody who will be nice and good and clear, and who will set out something that others can build on, a word that John used. And as the curator, I want the build to be really virtuous and good. So rather than have a fixed order, I'm thinking, is there somebody here who will start it off nicely? And I'm super fussy also. I quite like the facilitators to actually get the table to agree on somebody who will report back, but I don't want it to always be the alpha male at the table, because he is somebody who's quite good at speaking out clearly, like me. But we shouldn't be the people who automatically report. It should be others. And then fourthly, I'm talking away, going around and looking at how the facilitation is going, seeing whether the facilitators themselves are going to report back or somebody else at the table is going to report back. And I stop myself. Oh, it's not a report back. It's a feeling moment. What I really want is the facilitator in that period of reflecting on what happened at the table doesn't give a verbatim report on what everybody did, anonymized for effect. No, I want to know how it felt at the end, how the group got there, whether or not any big issues emerged, whether or not there was a sense of joy and satisfaction of what had happened in those 75 minutes. It's a feeling that I want, rather than a literal report back. And then lastly, don't worry, the feelings actually illustrate the themes that come out. If there's a joy at the table about some great work that's been done, there'll also be the clarity on what it was they were thinking about. You know, we're going to do a study of children's eating habits in order to get a baseline. And then we're going to be working with the local school authorities on altering the procurement pattern for foods in schools. When something like that starts to come out and you hear the energy around the idea, then you very quickly see the sense of the emerging theme. And what people love, if you are the curator, is when you can just link the different themes together. I know I blurred, I'm sorry, Florence, into the thing you asked me to talk about next. But last point is just to say, it very much is their show. It's the show of the people sitting around a discussion table. It's the show of the facilitators or their nominees or the group's nominees who feed back. It's the show of the whole group, the 60 or so people who are there. It's not your show as the curator. It's not the show of the facilitators. And if you feel that right from the start through to the end, of course, you'll still feel super nervous. It's like being a disc jockey or a playlist organizer at a party. If it goes wrong, you feel super guilty and you wish you'd done better. But you can let those feelings go. They'll have their fun. They will demonstrate huge ownership of the process. And you don't need to worry. It's not about you, it's about them. And whether you're facilitator or curator, whether you're dealing with just 10 or so people in a small discussion group, or the whole big group of 60 and trying to make sure that it all goes well, it's them who determine the result. Thank you, Fleur. Thank you, everybody. Lovely.
Thank you.